The U.S. confirming it's paused weapons shipments to Israel as of last week, worried the bombs it was sending to that country would be used on Rafah. It's a significant move from Israel's most powerful ally. Joining us now to analyze the military impact of this latest development is the former Chief of Defense Staff here in Canada, retired General Tom Lawson. Hi, General Lawson. Good to have you back on our program. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Vassy.
President Biden has for a long time expressed concern about Israel's strategy in Gaza at different points, but always said he is an ally of Israel and that it has the right to defend itself. This is the first time since October 7th that they've made a decision like this to actually halt weapons, the shipment of weapons, to pause those shipments. From your perspective, how significant is that?
Well, it's very significant. It's the first time, as you say, that we've seen this. It's mostly symbolic, and that's where its significance comes from. There's no doubt about it. Israel has an arsenal that includes quite a number of these large bombs, 2,000-pounders and 500-pounders. But this is the first time that they're seeing some of that support from the United States start to waver. Now, it's very clear that the Defense Secretary eased his steps, even while he was in front of Congress, by saying, first, there's not a final determination of where these weapons will go. Second, this is completely separate from what was passed in terms of aid, financial and military, in the House before. And finally, they fully support and commit to continuing to support the Israelis in the completion of this war.
So from your perspective, when you talk about it being mostly symbolic, does the possibility exist it could become more than symbolic?
Yeah, they're putting pressure on Netanyahu to do the things that he has been pressed to do for months now, and that is spend more time on not only feeding Palestinian innocents, but making sure that if and when he decides to attack in Rafah, that the innocent Palestinians have had time to find safe haven elsewhere. If those things aren't done, then I think we could see more steps like this. But I also think that Americans in the Biden administration are aware that there's only so far that you can push the Israelis before you cross a line beyond which they will not be moved.
And what do you think that line is? I know it's you don't have a crystal ball, but based on what you've seen so far, what is your sense of where that line is?
Well, the Israelis are very, very clear on how important their relationship with the United States is. And there's only one thing I think that the government and the people of Israel think is even more important than that, and that is regaining some level of security they felt before the October 7th attack. And if they were told, for instance, there are many politicians in the United States demanding a ceasefire, an entire ceasefire and an end to the war right now, that would be seen as a win for Hamas, and it's not something that Netanyahu, his government, or the Israeli people would accept. They would allow things to break down further with their American allies before they would accept that.
As far as what is happening in Rafah is concerned, I'm finding it really difficult to ascertain, sort of what is actually happening. And by that, I mean, just to qualify that comment, on the weekend, the talks were at an impasse. Then there was the possibility of Hamas accepting a proposal. Clearly, Israel was not in favor of the terms of that proposal, but they still sent a negotiating team. There was movement at the border, and it looked like Israel had seized the border crossing itself. But beyond that, is there a ground incursion underway in Rafah? I know there was an air assault, certainly over a number of days, but is there a ground incursion from what you can tell?
Well, from what I can tell, there is not yet. There's the facilitating steps are underway. Grabbing the Rafah crossing is something that Israel long knew they would have to do before any sort of attack happened, because there's a lot of things that have been coming across, not only in recent years, but even in recent weeks, from Egypt into Rafah. But I think what we've been seeing over the weekend and continues is a lot of misinformation from both sides, as both sides move towards what, for very different reasons, they would like, and that's a ceasefire. The remainder of Hamas fighters and Hamas leadership is now cornered underneath Rafah, in the tunnels underneath there. They need relief. They would like to see an end of the war. They would like to see something they could declare a win after this horrible destruction of Gaza. On the Israeli side, probably the only thing that Netanyahu and his people would like more than a completion of the war against Hamas is a return of the hostages that are still living and the remains of the hostages who have died along the way. So I think both sides want that for very different reasons. And Israel would accept some limited ceasefire with the idea that they would get the hostages back, knowing that Hamas at some point will take steps that will ruin this whole thing and allow them to continue the war at some point in the near future.
Is that what you estimate will essentially is how it will play out?
I'm not sure. I don't know if Hamas will fall into a trap where they give up the last of their bargaining chips, the hostages, without any sort of assurance that this would be the end of the war. So I think it's one way that we could see it go forward is a several week to a month ceasefire and a certain number of hostages come home and remains, and then maybe another ceasefire to allow another exchange. But there is no way that this will be the end of the war. So I think another way ahead is, if there isn't going to be a ceasefire, is that we will see more time for Palestinian civilians to take refuge as far away from Rafah as they can, but then a final assault. And this won't be over a week or 2 weeks. This will take a couple of months too. A final assault on the last of the Hamas fighters and their leadership team under Rafah.
Okay, General Lawson, great perspective tonight. Very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Vassy.